edition of the Bengal Chamber's Business IT Conclave. So this session would be chaired by Dr. Alok Roy, who is the past president of the chamber and chairman of Medica Group of Hospitals. He's a doctor turned entrepreneur. And with him, we have as speakers and panelists, Mr. Mukesh Rathi, Chief Digital and Information Officer, Dr. Reddy's Laboratories Limited, Ms. Anita Tripathi, Head of Data Sciences, Safety and Regulatory IQVIA, Dr. Jamie Unwin, Vice President and Head Global Business Intelligence and Analytics, Biocon Biologics, and Mr. Parthopratim Das Mahapatra, Founder and CEO, EasyRex Health Tech Private Limited. EasyRex is also incubated in the Webel BCCNI Tech Incubation Center. With this, I request Dr. Roy, please take the forward.
Thank you. Namaskar. Thanks, Angana. First of all, I must thank Bengal Chamber for organizing this Business IT Conclave with the Health Tech as one of the important sessions. And we have a very, very good panel of people who are very learned, very well informed. I had a brief session with them just 15 minutes back. I think without wasting our time, we have just 55 minutes with us. Last 15 minutes, we'd like to save it for the question answer, if there are any from the participants who are listening to us. And we would start with our panelist. And as we like to Mr. Mukesh Rathi to come first, talk about pharma tech disruptions in future. He is Chief Digital Information Officer, Dr. Reddy's Laboratories Limited. Rathi.
Thanks, Bengal Chambers, and hello to all the other panelists. I will use few slides to just let me know once you're able to see my pages.
We can see it very clearly.
Thank you. Yeah, so I work with Dr. Reddy's, and we live our vision every day to improve access to affordable and innovative medicines for patients across the world. And hence, everything we do, and in some form, we do sort of work across the entire pharmaceutical value chain. Everything we do is primarily with the objective of how do we ensure we keep patient centricity as the core of everything we are thinking, everything we are doing. What I will try and do over the next 10 minutes or so is share a few examples of in the value chain when we think about patient at the core, what type of transformation one could think of bringing by applying digital technologies in various processes in the value chain. Yeah. And then happy to take questions, suggestions, comments from other panelists and the audience. This is a brief, sort of very, very summarized view of how a pharmaceutical value chain looks like. One typically looking at unmet needs of patients, one thinks about what products or medicines one want to develop or work on. That goes into the R&D engine. The R&D engine works on creating that medicine. Typical cycle could be anything from 1 year to 3 years. Once the process is ready, it is sort of filed, and once the regulator approves, it goes into a regular commercial manufacturing process, which is serviced through the supply chain and reaches patients, across the world. I begin with R&D. This is a typical R&D process in pharmaceutical value chain, and technology/digital provides huge opportunities to transform and create breakthrough outcomes in each of the sub-processes, as well as when we look at all of it together into the overall value chain as well. What I'll do is, again, I'll not go through all of this. I'll pick up 2 or 3 examples.
Ms. Rathi, can I interrupt you? Can you please share it on a full screen, please?
Okay. Is that better? Sorry, I'm looking for some feedback.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, okay. All right. This is better, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so let's sort of, as I said, this is a typical R&D value chain looks like. One begins the active pharmaceutical ingredient, which goes into the development of formulation, goes through clinical process. Eventually, the technology is transferred to the plant. You make an exhibit batch. You use that data to file with the regulator, and once the regulator approves, you validate and launch it in the market for making it available for all the patients. Each one of these sub-processes, there are various opportunities which one can see in terms of doing a many-fold transformative change to the way these processes run today. I mean, let me just pick example of formulation development. What happens typically when a scientist starts working on a formulation, he or she typically begins by doing some research to find out what could be the right ingredients. What would the formulation look like? What excipients, what other coagulants, etc., should come together to make the medicine once, because the API is come from the innovator. And now with the application of digital tools, many of these processes, there is a possibility to do it at a much faster pace, many a times fully automate as well. What these tools also help us do is, typically when a scientist applies his thinking, he is restricted by the experience and by the literature he is able to access in the given period of time. With digital tools, one could actually go and scrape through a lot more literature, and one could actually build a database so that it becomes a lot more comprehensive and a lot more automated to say that what could be the potentially right formulation, which the scientist could think about when he's sort of making that medicine. Let me take another example. When sort of many of these things go to a clinical process, and this is sort of one example of how one could use, and there could be many other tools, how one could use vision APIs, or ability to look at images using various vision-based AI tools to get better outcomes. Typically, what happens is many of the processes nowadays involves deeper study of various images, these various equipments and R&D produces, and traditionally scientists have been used to seeing these images with naked eye, doing markings on those images, say whether it's sort of making sense, does it align with what I want to follow. Now, with the use of artificial intelligence, one could actually teach and create many of these algorithms which are able to identify as well as give right recommendation on these images, many a times even better than what manually a scientist would be able to do. Yeah. Another interesting example, also very relevant in the current context post-COVID, and interestingly, we did this before COVID and it was very helpful. So what happens is once a product is developed, it is actually transferred to the plant. This process is called technology transfer. And traditionally, the process has been you write a long big document, and then a scientist travels to the plant and he helps the plant team understand how to run this process. He stays there and takes them through the process until the process is very well understood by the plant. With COVID, a lot of that was not possible. And what we have is now a Google Glass-based recording of the process when the scientist is actually doing it in the lab. And then it becomes available to the plant in the same form. And when the plant team is doing, they use a similar Google Glass so that the operator is getting live feedback from the scientist when he or she is running the process there. This essentially saves tremendous amount of productive time, travel, all of that. At the same time, increase much better outcome, creates much better outcome in terms of ensuring successful transfer, right? So likewise, there are use cases in each part of the product development cycle. When one sort of looks at it together, overall, it has the great capability to do much faster product development and better assurance of outcome. And hence, living to our vision of how do we enable quicker access to medicines for patients across the world. Maybe take another example on manufacturing side. We are currently onto a journey to create all our important and big plants into what we are calling as digital lighthouses. Objective here is we look at all processes again within manufacturing and then think about applying digital and analytics capability to do a manifold improvement into those processes or sub-processes across the plant. Let me take again few examples. Let's take example of production. In pharmaceutical manufacturing, what happens is typically an operator, when he's trying to set up a machine, given the broad parameters in which one is supposed to run it, he spends some time, depending on the type of input material which has come in, to ensure that the parameter is set right. Typically, this process could take anything from half an hour to 1 hour. Many times, there is initial loss of medicine when he's setting it up. Again, using artificial intelligence and using past data, one could actually create algorithm which, looking at what the API specs which are coming into the plant, actually automates and tells exactly the parameter which the operator should set the machine at. Hence, it does two things. Number one, it increases much better quality of outcome. It reduces lost time and lost medicines. It also reduces dependency on that individual and his experience, to be able to set it right. And hence creates a huge shift in the way one, thinks about production. Here, the example I took is bullet 3 onto production, which is called guided machines. Likewise, there are other examples. Maybe I'll pick one more, say from quality. Typically, robotic process automation as a process has been applied in most of the back-end processes where one does financials, accounting, all of that stuff. This is one of the very interesting use cases where we've sort of applied it in quality. Now, in order to ensure that we are, producing and ensuring that the medicines which are going out are of the best quality, there is a high regulatory process which every pharmaceutical manufacturing company follows. There is this whole process of maker and a checker. And then there are a lot of these checkers into quality system who essentially more or less go through everything what the analyst did when he did the quality test and verifies whether he or she did everything as per the SOP or not. Now, this essentially is a standard checklist which they follow, and essentially they match data across various systems and documents, etc. Now, this one automates using robotic process automation. Essentially, a robot or bot does what a human being does here. And essentially, it has access to, it's a chair without anybody sitting in there, right? And the robot has access to all the other systems. It actually runs through the checklist, ensures, does all the verification, and then whenever there is a deviation, that deviation goes to somebody to manually look into it. This creates 2 or 3 key benefits. Number one, it's a big productivity benefit. Second, typically these maker jobs are very boring. They're very repetitive. And bots don't get bored. They work 24/7 with the same amount of efficiency and correctness, and hence it improves quality of output. We do not miss things into this process. And third and most important, we are generating digital data, which tells us what are the typical mistakes which are happening, and hence ability to do root cause in the future and ensure we are doing away with them as well. So that's sort of one example. And then, of course, multiple similar examples around how do we improve robustness of product, sort of create much better quality. And of course, capability building is another important lever for the operator, the analyst, and the entire plant leadership into this process. Eventually, objective is to sort of that our digital lighthouses help us reduce overall cost, reduce OPEX, create much better quality, and living to our vision of how do we make medicines more affordable to our patients across the world. Maybe a third example I will take. So the first 2 which I took were more around how do we improve access to medicines or pills by making them faster, by making them more affordable. This one is an example around how we are also thinking about the patient journey beyond the pill or beyond the medicine.
Mr. Mukesh, we can finish it in a minute, please.
Sure. Thanks for the reminder. So here's an example of a digital solution which we created, which helps cancer patients across and this is a pilot which we are running in Latin America. From the point of initial diagnosis to the point they complete the whole journey of multiple treatment cycles, side effects, what type of nutrients they need, what side effects they are seeing, all of that is tracked through this platform, which we have created for cancer patients. And this sort of works manifold in terms of has an interface for the caregiver, has an interface for the hospital, such that the platform brings together everything the patient needs to be sort of comfortable into the entire journey. So I'll take a pause here. My objective of sharing these 3 examples was to primarily bring out that digital tech overall has the capability, when thought through and connected to the purpose and the vision, to create manifold 2x, 5x, 10x type of impact, depending on the type of processes or problems one is solving, and eventually create difference to the lives of patients. So that was the long and short of what I wanted to measure, share. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rathi. It was a fantastic, really nice. A lot of learning. Haven't got any questions so far. So then with that, we'll move on to Ms. Anita Tripathi, Head of Data Sciences, and she's talking about technologies in clinical research, next opportunities.
Thank you, Dr. Ray. Let me share my screen. Can you all see my screen now? So
Yes.
I will delve a little more into what Mukesh said and delve into how technology is transforming the entire drug development process. I know this is a complex diagram, but what we are saying is from the time you identify a molecule to the time it's marketed, it takes us almost 15 years. And when you identify 10,000 compounds, it goes through the discovery process, then it goes through the preclinical trials, which is animal trials. And when it reaches human trials, the first in human, the phase 2 and phase 3, you basically have 5 compounds out of that 10,000 that goes through the clinical trial. And out of them, only 1 or 2 get approved by FDA and EMA and other global regulatory bodies. And the money that it takes to take a single molecule to the market in the global arena is about 1.9 billion US dollars, and it has increased from 1.4 billion US dollars to 1.9 billion US dollars in the last 4 years. So this is not sustainable. This is absolutely not sustainable. And the clinical trials are becoming more and more complex. We are trying to find solutions for more chronic and degenerative diseases. The easy diseases, as I always say, are all gone. And when you look at the clinical trial, 5% of the patients opt to participate in clinical trials, and 67% of those who opt to participate in clinical trials drop out of clinical trials. So the industry is at an inflection point, and they need to transform, and they are transforming. How are they transforming? Let us look at how clinical trials used to be conducted in the past. We used to recruit an investigator in a hospital who's a physician for a particular therapeutic area. The physician will recruit the patient, and then he'll administer the investigational product. And there is episodic data collection, and then whenever there is data collection, we'll get the data and we'll process the data, we'll do the safety reporting, we'll do the clinical endpoints, and so on and so forth. That is slowly changing with a number of devices, sensors coming into the market, and the trials are slowly moving closer and closer to where the patient is. And the physicians have the ability to do real-time continuous monitoring because of these sensors. I know some other speakers will talk about the connected devices space, but you have a continuous glucose monitor, a spirometry device, electrocardiogram, everything can be online, and people are wearing a lot of sensors that's generating data. And what is happening in the future, what is going to happen in the future is that the trials will move to the patient's homes. So the intervention, especially the non-interventional trials, will be delivered in the patient's homes, and there'll be continuous monitoring of the data, and the care will become a lot virtual, and this will lead to higher patient reduction. And the fact that the physician has the ability and has a 360-degree view to the patient's data, the current data, all the biomarkers, the concomitant medication, the comorbidities, the ability of the physician to respond to any adverse event will be much higher. Thereby, the success rate of clinical trials is going to be much higher. So technology is transforming this world primarily on 3 broad categories. One is the quality of care is becoming more because there is medicine. The patient can reach to the physician anytime. Remotely, the patient can be monitored and tracked all the time for all the vitals, for all the biomarkers. And now with the advent of technology, with the wearable, with the Internet of Things, the big data and analytics, we have the ability to integrate data, the clinical data, the lab data, all the scans. Then we have the electronic health records in big countries like US, where you know about every medical condition that the patient has gone through, the CONMED, comorbidities. So your ability to make the therapy more personalized. The physician has more data at his fingertips to be able to isolate and target the disease. And then the care is moving to a value-based care, a more outcome-based care. Primarily because we are able to detect diseases early. If I may step back a little, kidney transplant. It has 6 stages till it reaches to a transplant stage. And when you reach stage 3, after that, the transplant becomes irreversible. But if you can detect, there are biomarkers that are elevated even in stage 1. And if you find what are the biomarkers that are elevated in stage 1 and put them through additional testing, then you can identify those patients that have a potential of having a kidney transplant 6 years down the line. And before they reach that stage 3, you can reverse the process. And I think Mukesh alluded to this a little when he talked about this early detection. And then with the availability of the genetic data, with the electronic health records and all kinds of data sources, the medicine is becoming more personalized and more, it's called the precision medicine. So very soon in the near future, you will probably have very, very targeted therapies for very small patient populations. So the patient is in the midst of all this. If you look at the clinical trials, the patient nowadays, I'm saying the patient is slowly becoming the king. He's very well informed because there are web-based applications talking about all kinds of clinical trials. There are disease-specific apps. There are patient help groups, which he's a part of. He can talk to other people that are undergoing the therapy. He can find out everything about the trial. He can enroll himself, volunteer himself. That is the concept of e-source coming in the Western world, where the patient will have access to all his clinical data. And so the process will be transparent to him. And earlier on, in the good old days, in a clinical trial, it was primarily the physician that was reporting back all the outcomes for the patient. But now patients are more enabled by technology with tools like patient-reported outcomes and clinical objective assessment tools, where there is a voice of the patient or a voice of customer. We talked about the wearables, the medical device, and telemedicine, how that is transforming the care paradigm. And the clinical trials, we have a lot of remote monitoring where we look at each site, we look at each patient and identify the risk profile. We identify the signal of whether this patient is going to have an adverse event or not, so that there is closer scrutiny. And then obviously with the artificial intelligence and machine learning, the outcomes will become better and better and more targeted. And we already doing that. I can give you another example where we're looking at an oncology trial, and about 5 to 10% of the patients fail the first line therapy. And by the time he fails the first line therapy, he's gone through 5-6 cycles of chemo and he's exhausted, and he probably is not in a condition to go to the second line therapy. So using a lot of the genomics data and other data available, you can predict who are the potential population that can fail the first line therapy and directly put them on the second line therapy. So this is truly very transformative, and the market is very, very huge, and it's predicted to grow at 20% CAGR. So in our industry, it's very highly regulated. Every day when we wake up in the morning, we think about what FDA is going to say and how MHRA is going to react to our drugs, and what is DCGI saying in India. But I think these agencies have opened up and adopted to these technologies very fast. FDA has published recommendations and social media guidelines. FDA has published guidelines on patient-reported outcomes. A lot of the big pharma, local pharmas are launching virtual trials. We are working on a number of them. They are very open to creating social media-based strategies to engage with target patients, to have better patient engagement and have better patient retention during the trials. So the industry is adopting quickly, changing quickly. So where is India in all this, right? What is the impact on the India skill market, and where are the next opportunities for all of us? In the last 5-7 years, there is increased offshoring to India across the value chain of the clinical drug development. There is a quick expansion in the number of contract research organizations like ours, and pharmas are setting up their own captive centers in India for clinical development, and the headcount numbers are growing exponentially. If you look at India for the last 20-30 years, there has been a complete expansion of engineers, right? Last 20 years, I think everybody has studied computer science, and there is a lot of need for, there has been a huge need for tech specialists, but there is increased need for B Pharms, M Pharms, MBBS, MDs, PhDs in clinical biostatistics, masters in stats, masters in public health, because we need people who understand the domain, who understand clinical endpoints, who can do the safety and efficacy analysis. So all that need is increasing. And we see increased leverage of technology skills that India is very, very well equipped to handle, to bring in efficiency, automation into the development process. We need study programmers, we need statistical programmers, we need AML skills for predictive analytics. We need people who can integrate data from structured and unstructured sources to create big data and cloud-based services. And obviously the wearable market, the sensor market is exploding. So with this, I will end my presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Dr. Anita. I think we will now move on to Dr. Jeremy Unwin. He's a Vice President and Head Global Business Intelligence and Analytics, Biocon Biologics. He's talking about strategies for patient-centric innovations in the biosimilar industry. At the same time, I will urge listeners and participants to kindly keep their questions ready, and please pass it on to us.
Thank you, Dr. Roy. Anita, if you could kindly stop sharing your screen.
Dr. Jeremy.
Super. Can you hear me okay, Dr. Roy?
Yes, we do, Jamie.
Super. Just one moment.
We can hear you. You have 10 minutes.
You can see my slides?
Yes.
Great. So everybody, thank you so much, Dr. Roy, and thank you for the Chamber for the invitation to speak with you today, and greetings from a very cold and wintry London. I'm going to talk to you today about digital enablement of patient centricity. And I actually think it's really appropriate that I'm speaking to you from the UK today, because a decade ago, the National Health Service in the UK authored a strategy document. And in that strategy document, they firmly positioned patients as being the central tenet of everything that the NHS did. And they coined a term that the NHS should make no decisions about patients without them. Nothing about me without me. And I personally can't think of a better North Star to guide pharmaceutical innovation as those words that the NHS use now. I think they're actually more relevant now than they were a decade ago. So I'm going to talk to you about biosimilars, and I'm going to talk to you about digital therapeutics. So let me start with biosimilars. And I think we heard a lot earlier about the development process for innovative pharmaceuticals, and thank you for that, Anita. Biosimilars are a little bit different. They're often confused with generic medicines. They both arrive on the scene at the end of a patent life for a branded molecule, but biosimilars are really different. They're biological products. They are incredibly difficult to manufacture. These are huge molecules rather than small chemicals. They have to be, by their very nature, almost identical, if not, well, they're not identical, but they're very similar to an originator molecule in terms of the purity, the molecular structure, and the bioactivity. And there has to be, as part of the regulatory pathway, no meaningful difference of the biosimilar versus the reference product itself. So opportunities for biosimilar manufacturers to innovate are actually few and far between. So innovators, innovative biopharmaceutical, innovative biosimilar companies innovate around the molecular structure and offer services, solutions, opportunities beyond the medicine itself. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes just describing what opportunities like that look like, and then we'll get into the data and tech a little bit later. And I've just very simply here plotted a scale of innovation versus value perception here. And innovation, as I've said, happens around the molecule. We can't develop a better molecule. It has to be the same molecule and better. So aspects such as dropping the price, okay, so developing a higher, tighter fermentation, increasing the stabilization of a molecule so that the supply chain is simplified, increasing the strength so a patient actually has to administer less medicine, improving the device so it's a less painful needle, increasing the amount of clinical data so doctors can make more informed prescribing decisions, etc., moving all the way up to services and solutions which increase or are increased patient-centric solutions. So services being those things that help our patients have a better relationship with the medicines themselves. So it's easy to plot value perception, right? But value perception is a metric which is incredibly personal. And the perceived value for a hospital administrator is different to the perceived value to a healthcare practitioner, and is certainly different to the perceived value of a patient. So what we need to do, rather than actually looking at individual stakeholder journeys and value to individual stakeholders, is to think about the ecosystem as a whole and how that interplays. I think this is a great example, right? These are data from the US. And in the US, the healthcare systems are breaking, even more so post-COVID, right, or peri-COVID, should I ask. What we see, what we would assume is that by simply dropping price, one can really offer great value back to a system and all members of that system. But I changed the names here to protect the innocent, but these are real data from in-market performance of 4 biosimilar molecules in supportive care and in oncology. And when we compare the comparative price levels versus the originator, we actually see that dropping the price does not actually grow your share of volume within the market. So there are multiple factors at play. Simply dropping the price is not enough in terms of delivering innovation back to our systems. So what is it and how do we actually identify it? What we can't do is look at individual stakeholders, right? We can't just follow the patient through. We can't follow the payer through. We can't follow the prescriber through. We need to follow the entire ecosystem through. And ecosystem innovation is the most sticky innovation because it solves the needs of multiple stakeholders. So what we do within Biocon Biologics is we sort of rip up the stakeholder map playbook and we look at the world in terms of ecosystems. And this is just a nice graphical representation here of how a type 2 diabetic interacts with their ecosystem. And it's a mix of people, it's a mix of places, it's a mix of tool, and it's a mix of the Internet of Things. So, and when we're mapping the ecosystem around a patient, we always put the patient at the center, of course. We try and understand how interactions are happening with their healthcare practitioners. We're trying to understand what the burden is in terms of their journey towards the places where they present to have their therapy managed or their treatment managed. Increasingly as well, we look at the community in which they find themselves in terms of patient support groups, online forums and how they talk to their family and friends. But I think also from a data generation point of view and an insight possibility point of view, the real opportunities here from a technology stance are around the devices and the channels in which the patient investigates his or her condition, and also the systems through which they communicate. Anita, in the previous presentation there, really nicely described the Internet of Things. Diabetes is a wonderful example where the Internet of Things is growing and mature and will continue to snowball in terms of value it adds to patients. So patients on a day-to-day basis communicate either passively or digitally through their electronic health records, through online pharmacy systems, through their online blood glucose monitors, their BGMs, through all information around that channel. So really great opportunities to capture information and understand and position value that is that reflects opportunities to everybody within this matrix and not just one or two stakeholders. So just switching gear now on my last couple of slides, we're trying to identify innovation that is of value to all stakeholders within the ecosystem. I want to talk to you, I'd really like to introduce you to an increasingly mature concept, not a concept anymore, there are regulated products on the market now, which is digital therapeutics, or DTX. DTX, digital therapeutics, are part of the bigger digital health ecosystem, but they're significantly more advanced than that. When we think about digital health, you might think about your Apple Watch, which counts your steps and counts your heartbeat. You might think about digital medicine, which is how you have a conversation, a teleconsult with your physician by, as we are now, just speaking online to them. Digital therapeutics are something different. They actually offer evidence-based therapy. So they are offering clinically effective solutions, sometimes with, sometimes in the place of medications. They generate clinical evidence and are regulated because they have clinical evidence, and they require deep, meaningful regulatory approval, typically through FDA, EMA type processes. So these are moving forward, and these have the opportunity to add value back to all stakeholders within the ecosystem. And just to share three examples here. So digital therapeutics are of three types. They can either stand alone, so they can flip they can obviate the use for a medication, and Pear Therapeutics have a regulated product now by which you can engage through your smartphone for digital advice to self-administer your own treatment with regards to substance misuse or with regards to insomnia. In terms of complementing therapies as well, Omada Health have a very mature offering as well, which is aimed to manage proactively your relationship with type 2 diabetes and also with hypertension and other associated chronic diseases as well. But as a biosimilar manufacturer trying to seek innovation, we get excited by opportunities such as the ones which Voluntis are bringing forward. So Voluntis bring the opportunity to augment a current medication. What Voluntis bring forward is a titration support application. So what essentially happens is that when a patient presents to receive their insulin, conceptually they would also receive the digital therapeutic. They would then go home, and on a day-to-day basis, as they try and manage their blood glucose level, they would be given automated, algorithm-driven recommendations for the amount of insulin that they should give. And this adds value to all different nodes within the ecosystem. There are better outcomes. Our healthcare practitioners meet their goals. There's reduced drug wastage. Our patients have a better relationship with their medication. The burden on the healthcare system to have a conversation with the patient is reduced. So the need for teleconsults or actually traveling to the hospital is reduced as well. So this is a truly system-centric innovation rather than actually being a simply patient-centric one. And that's my final slide. I think the messages that I would give you is that we're making significant advances within the industry, and particularly within the biosimilar industry, to try and identify opportunities to innovate around the molecule itself. Digital therapeutics really does offer an opportunity there. And I think by offering value across all of the ecosystem, we're really starting to offer value in light of the words that the NHS made, and that we're bringing forward innovation that is truly innovative in the eyes of patients, and we're not actually making decisions without them, we're making them about them. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Jamil. That was really very, very useful. To Mr. Partho Pratim Das Mahapatra. He's the founder and CEO, Easy RX Health Technology Private Limited, startup story in non-invasive diagnosis. Mr. Partho.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Roy and Bengal Chamber of Commerce for the opportunity. So today I am focusing on the non-invasive diagnostic device, which is basically useful for the early detection. And today we are focusing on the early detection and patient-centric approach towards the industry. So I'm basically focusing on the problem statement today is due to the delayed detection of anemia, liver and the lungs problem, resulting loss of more than lakhs lives in every year. And especially in India, 2 out of 3 women in our country are anemic, and every year around 1 million people are getting liver problems nowadays. As well as 23% of the death in our country are related to the oxygen saturation. So we developed a device. The device name is EasyCheck, is a non-invasive portable device which can measure temperature, detect anemia, predict liver and lungs problem within less than 5 seconds and without taking a single drop of blood from the human body. So it's a pretty simple device having a spectroscopic technique in it, and through the Bluetooth, it can connect to the Android mobile app. So it will collect the patient details, then it will guide patient to place his left hand ring finger into the device, and in less than 5 seconds, it will capture the data and it will show you the value of hemoglobin, bilirubin, oxygen saturation, and the temperature within less than 5 seconds. And this report can be transferred to a city-based hospital from a rural village within fraction of second. So we completed our trial, multi-centric clinical trial, and we got a good accuracy around 95 to 96%. And this device also patented. The main USP of the product is it's a non-invasive, it's affordable, it's accessible, it will give you instant result, it's IoT enabled, and is easy to operate. Till 28th October, we completed our test around 28,000, where we identified anemic people, liver and the lungs problem. And mostly the major social impact we created is we saved more than 55 liter blood and we saved more than 2,000 man days. We went through different kind of persona, where one is the hospital, where we identified 72% of the patient regularly coming to the doctors to showcase their report and get their treatment plan done. As well as we identified some doctors and we get the insight like around 80% of the people coming repeated to the doctors to get their treatment plan done. So identified this problem from these two persona. We also realized there's a very big market size for this hemoglobin, bilirubin, and oxygen saturation market. We are basically focusing on 3 broad customer base. One is the private hospital and the clinics. Second is government hospital and the schemes. And third is the CSR and the NGO partner. We are selling this device in 2 modes. One is we are selling it as a cost of 45,000 rupees. It's one model. Another model is we are selling in a per test basis. Per test we are charging only 10 rupees. We received many awards and the recognition in our 2 years of journey. We received award from Tata Social Enterprise Challenge. We received gold award from Infosys Foundation, and many state government and the central government are funded us various grants, and mostly Indian Oil is supported us in a very big way. So recently, this device is deployed 25 different places in our country, including the government project and the private hospitals. Also, we started deploying our oral cancer detection device in Odisha, and we are started screening in 3 major districts in Odisha. One is Puri, second one is Ganjam, and third one is the Khurda. These 3 districts we have started screening for mostly the deprived communities, and our target is to sell around 5,000 screening device across the country by the next year. Future target is using the same platform. We started working for detecting the creatinine and the diabetes, and slowly we'll adopt other parameters in coming days. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Partha. Thanks for the presentation. I think we had a very nice presentation from all the panelists, and I don't know about others, but for me it was a good learning experience. And a lot of things which I learned as a physician, which I would have not come across, and I was very, very pleasantly surprised to see that so many things are happening. Before we ask questions from participants, may I ask panelists to, if anybody would like to comment anything at this point of time?
Actually, I have a sort of comment for Partha, I mean, if we have time.
We have.
Yeah, so Partha, first of all, amazing innovation. Would you sort of talk about a minute more around the technology, this non-invasive technology, and use some spectroscopy? If you could sort of just explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you, Mukesh. So basically, we have a absorption-based spectroscopy in it. So the light will come to this is the device. This is pretty simple device. So what it does is the light is come here. So if I place my finger here, so the light will go to the penetration depth of a certain range, and then we can also calculate the depth of the light penetration through the IR light, and then we receive the signal, and then we transfer the signal from the device to our server, and we have a neural network to predict the value of hemoglobin, bilirubin, and the oxygen saturation here.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you, Mukesh.
Okay, so I don't see any more questions coming from participants, and we still have a few minutes in our hand. I would like to, first of all, Mr. Ati, it was really, your digital lighthouse was fantastic, phenomenal, and how does it reduce conversion, OPEX cost, and how does it assure quality? And that the thing which you mentioned, that robots don't get tired and they don't need a break, was really very encouraging. And that what you said about technology transfer, about digital copying, in which a lab passes on the processes which they have followed. On this point, and if Dr. Anita would like to comment on, as Mr. Ati said, that the process which has been followed in the lab is given to them digitally to the shop, to the manufacturing floor. Does similar thing happen in your area of action also? Dr. Anita?
Can you hear me? So during the
Yes.
clinical trials, we have to send the investigational product to the physicians who will do the intervention, right? So there is a very controlled manufacturing process. So after the animal trials, the manufacturing process blueprint is decided, the formulation is decided, and there is controlled manufacturing of the investigational product through the clinical trial. And after we go through various phases of the clinical trial, the first in human, the phase 2 and the phase 3, obviously in each phase of the clinical trial, you have different clinical endpoints that you identify and measure. And at the end of the human clinical trial, it goes for marketing approval to the regulatory bodies. It's called NDA. After that happens, after you get the marketing approval, you again send across your formulation and your blueprint to the manufacturing. And the manufacturing team has a what we call a good manufacturing practices that FDA follows, and they have a very stringent guideline of manufacturing drugs, and there are requirements around storage and all kinds of things.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, it was really very, very difficult to even assimilate that you have to spend $1.9 billion to take a drug to the market. And from 5,000, 10,000 to one drug in 10 to 15 years is very, very tough uphill task. It was I think, something which I never knew. So I'm sure everybody else is also appreciating of it. I would like, my next question would be to Mr. Dr. Jamie Unwen, where Mr. Rathi did mention about artificial intelligence tool using images for impact of drugs. And you are in biosimilars, as you said, that you have to create something which is more effective. The price is not a selling point. Selling point is similarity, effectiveness, its action and all those. So how much role artificial intelligence plays in your biosimilar innovation and in that journey?
Yeah, huge. Thank you, Dr. Roy. Thank you for the question. It's interesting to reflect it in light of what Mukesh described there. Just for clarification, price is important, but it's not the only thing, was my argument here. How does AI, machine learning, data science more generally, what's the application to that within the biosimilars space? I'd say everywhere and deep. Okay, so we're systematically look at all of our processes in terms of process optimization, trying to understand that interface between Lean and Six Sigma and data sciences, how we can lean out a lot of our processes, how we can overlay robotic processes to simplify some of the more handle-turning type activities. So a lot of work that's done there in terms of operational excellence. But I think I, particularly as an insights professional, get excited about how we use artificial intelligence, how we use machine learning, how we use, again, more general data science techniques to synthesize insights from noise. So my stance in terms of competitiveness from an insight generation point of view is we as a biosimilar manufacturer will best position our medicines if we can make best sense of the terabytes of noise that present into the system every second. So that's what I try and encourage my teams to do, is to take all of the noise that come from devices, that come from wearables, that come from glucose monitors, that come from social media, so that we can overlay data sciences tools and generate new insights there. So yeah, the very techniques that Mukesh described there in terms of streamlining the way that we bring medicines to market are also perhaps just as relevant within the biosimilar space.
Dr. Jamie, what caught my attention, which was a little very, very surprised, where you said digital therapeutics. You mentioned about in that disease avoidance in employees. That was phenomenal. How does it work?
So it's about proactive management, right? So managing your descent from a pre-diabetic into a diabetic space, right? So insulin and medication is not the only route. There's a huge growing body of information at the minute now where pre-diabetic states can be arrested, and digital methodologies are being used to try and manage that as well. It's truly groundbreaking stuff. we as an organization, we have the aspiration, we have a strategic strapline within Biocom Biologics, which is to transform healthcare, transform lives. So we get really excited about opportunities like that and the use of digital methodologies to really change the way that patients have relationships with their medication and also with their disease.
Thank you. Mr. Partho, how far you are away from the marketing your product and what are the acceptance in the market?
So recently we sell some units to some government project in Odisha and also deployed 12 device to KIMS hospital and some last mile service provider in Puri. So now the accuracy is better compared to the last version of the device, and we are also trying to collect more data from various hospitals across the country for the betterment of the accuracy and the sensitivity.
Thank you. I think Dr. Partho, thank you very much. I think we are reaching to the end of our webinar, but I would not be fair if I do not point out the lucidity with which all the speakers have presented. And it was very, very opener for at least me, and I'm sure for the other participants, what Dr. Anita said about the moving of clinical trials from where the patient was it was a hospital base is the voice of patient. The word she used was voice of patient, and is informed. He's kept involved, and the way it is evolving, the way artificial intelligence is coming in, and the story of biosimilars, very, very encouraging. And also that Dr. Anita, your last point, you said that you need a lot of statisticians and a lot of other people in the journey of clinical discovery, which India need to produce. I'm sure somebody is noticing it and somebody would work on that. With this, I like to thank you all the panelists for participating in this IT conclave where we all got together. With this, I pass it on over to Angana.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to Mr. Mukesh Rathi, Ms. Anita Tripathi, Dr. Jemi Anwin, and Mr. Pathrapratim Das Mahapatra, and of course to our very own Dr. Alok Roy. We couldn't have done this this year's edition with the theme Technology for Humans without health tech as our session. So thank you all. Thank you to all our participants online and friends from media. Thanks to our sponsors, Diamond sponsor, MB Software, Gold sponsor, PwC, Silver sponsor, Infinity, NextGen, and JIS, who's our chief patron too. Bronze sponsor, CESC, EasyRex, Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, and Mazars. Outreach partner, Indian American International Chamber of Commerce, for whom we are having participants from US as well in this session, and to our special thanks to Government of West Bengal IT and E Department. So with this, we are concluding the session on health tech, and we will move on to the next session, that is technologies for power to make it more abundant, efficient, and eco-friendly, being in sync with SDG Social Development Goal 7. So the audience who are with us in the webcast and YouTube, you stay tuned. For the FB audience, we are reliving. We'll take a couple of minutes. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Thank you.